So excited to be sitting here with this gentleman right here, or gangsta. This is my man, Jason Williams. I discovered Jason online. I was, because I was talking to some friends in LA and they were like, why aren't you starting a recovery podcast? And my good friend DJ Linwood, we talked about it and I said, okay, great. So I started looking into it. And one of the first guys that I found in my research of looking for a guest was Jason Williams, and I saw Sober Gangster, and I was like, I need to find out what this guy is all about, man. And it's like I love the name, and I started looking at the apparel on your website at sobergangster.com, and man, what a pleasure to have you join the show. And we've obviously connected prior to this on talking on the phone and stuff. So, Jay, man, thanks for joining me today.
No, I'm super excited. I love getting the opportunity to do these and just talk recovery. You didn't introduce yourself to everybody.
Yeah, well,
you gotta let the world know who you are.
I'll let the world know who I am. I am Mickey the Kid. That was my on-air name for 20 years, rocking around this great country: Chicago, Dallas, Cleveland, Miami, Portland, Oregon, and all parts in between. And yeah, I'm a morning radio broadcaster turned drug addict, alcoholic, degenerate, POS. Turned into a man passion for life, who has a deep affinity for other people and doing good by the world. Today, that's my whole world. My whole world is a changed world from the way I used to live to who I am today. But thank you for reminding me to tell who we're talking to. But I want to know more about you, man.
And that's how we connected. Like we got on a call, we messaged first, and you told me a little of your story. And man, it was just exciting to hear, what you've experienced and where you were at and what you went through. And, we only got to scratch the surface, but, where you're at now and what you're doing with this Shot of Hope Live. And I'm really excited and inspired by it. Honestly, you've already helped me a lot with things I'm working on. So, I'm just glad to be here and glad to talk to another
drug addict,
alcoholic. Yeah, absolutely.
Another guy in recovery, man. It's who we are. There's a lot of us out there, and there's a lot of people that need hope today, man. And it was one of the main reasons why I thought about you when I we can all get the big rock star and all that stuff, but and I know plenty of them that'll come on and do the show, but I wanted to talk to a guy that maybe isn't all the way up here right now. I want to talk to the guy who's on his way up there, the guy who had the story, who's got put together the time, who's put in the work, who's cried, who's had the broken system feel, because how many times in our recovery do we just want to quit sometimes? Sometimes we think that's the best thing. And being an entrepreneur and starting your own website, and man, all the struggles. So that's what I'm really interested in. I think what I want to ask most importantly is that how did you, growing up? I mean, what was your life like growing up as a kid? I mean, did you come from a bad area or a bad home? I mean, or awesome suburban home? I mean, how did we do it?
I mean, you can see I'm sitting in my barn in Sun Valley, Idaho. I was born and raised in Idaho, born in Boise, Idaho. My family, I just got to celebrate with my parents probably a month ago now, their 50th wedding anniversary. So
wow.
Like they've been married for 50 years, loving home, loving family, super supportive. There wasn't drinking, abuse, any of the stuff that you would, hear a lot of times that comes with addiction.
Sure.
It was not part of my story. I had a great life, great upbringing, definitely middle. I had a fly come in when I had my door open and it's going to sit here and buzz. And when I keep swatting things, it's because there's a fly. Middle-class family, and they were great. They were loving and not any of the trauma that you tend to kind of expect that comes along with, alcoholism and addiction. And that's the thing. It doesn't discriminate. It touches everybody. It doesn't matter what your upbringing is. It didn't matter where I came from. The second alcohol touched my lips, something happened. And, a shift happened, and that Jekyll and Hyde story came true in my life. And my parents who, were raising this quiet, kind, funny, loving kid, all of a sudden we're dealing with a like you said, a scumbag, a nightmare. Like I would turn into
Yeah.
an abuser overnight and violent, um, and they didn't know what happened. They didn't know where it came from. They didn't know what they did wrong. They ask themselves that question more times than I can ever imagine. They're the people I probably put through the most with my addiction is my family. And now, and you talked about it when we were doing the intro. Like I've been sober far longer than I've used. Like my using period was very short, and um, my story is I always got caught. Like a net always got thrown over me. I was always the one that went to jail. I was always the one that overdosed. I was always the one that ended up in handcuffs. And I think that for me escalated, quantum leap my time, luckily, to where I was constantly living in bottoms.
Sure.
And so,
Oh.
I think I used for 4 years, maybe 4 years at the most, 5 years.
Yeah.
But I've been sober for 26 here in 8 days. As long as I don't do something stupid, it'll be 27 years.
That's awesome.
So
it's huge.
I've been sober far longer than I have been in active addiction. However, in recovery, I have been just as broken as I was in active addiction. Like I've felt the emptiness, I've felt the pain, and making it through those times. I like to say, even when I tell my story and, other environments, the only thing that I've done perfectly over the last 27 years is not drink no matter what.
Yeah.
Like I have screwed up everything in my recovery. I've done the 12 steps wrong. I've, caused harm in recovery. Like I've done all the things that you're not supposed to do in recovery. The only thing I did perfectly was just not drink no matter what. Because when I was broken, I was able to get back to the solution. And I think that's, important. And we'll dive into that, I'm sure. But I came from a great family background. And, we lived in Boise, Idaho. Everything was great. My dad got a job offer to run a gold mine in Nevada.
Wow.
We talked about it as a family. It was like a family sit down, like you see on TV. Yeah. We sat at the family dinner table and talked about making this transition to Las Vegas, Nevada, and decided as a family we were going to go on an adventure.
Okay.
And we relocated to Las Vegas, Nevada the summer
like
of my yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Family moving. We're going to Vegas, family.
This is my other addiction.
Arnold Palmer's. Yeah,
light, half and half, man. They're always in my hand. Enjoy. So we did a transition to Las Vegas the summer of my freshman year, and the big thing for me was in Idaho, going into ninth grade. We had junior high school, so going into ninth grade, I was supposed to be like top of the pyramid. And sure. Part of my story is I was bullied all through elementary school and junior high school. I was pretty nerdy, skinny, braces, big hair.
Why do I not picture? I can't even picture that.
And so when I was, finally at that point of like, okay, I'm a ninth grader, I'm going to be at the top of the food chain in junior high. We moved to Las Vegas, where starting off in ninth grade means you're in high school. So I skipped that like top of the food chain. And not only was I going into high school, I was going into high school in Las Vegas, Nevada, that there was 5,000 kids in our school with like metal detectors. Nice. It wasn't like a Boise, Idaho school of what I was used to. And so
I took a little kid out of the farmland and put him in put him where the action is.
Yeah. And so I instantly got a dose of like, out of my bubble of Boise, Idaho. I've lived how I've lived my whole life, but things were different in Las Vegas, and it wasn't, I walked into something that I wasn't really prepared for. Luckily I got to make some good friends prior to going into high school. That we had to rent an apartment in an okay area while our middle class house was being built, and I met a lot of kids in that apartment complex, and they kind of prepped me for what I was going to be dealing with at high school. At least I didn't walk in there blind. And it was just a whole nother world overnight. Like it wasn't.
You weren't latchkey though, right? Mom was still home in the house, or how did?
Oh yeah, well, she would. Yeah, they both my mom would off and on work. Sometimes she'd be working, sometimes not. But no, I wasn't unsupervised a lot. There was a lot of structure in my life, a lot of rules and chores and the things that, at that time, that's how we were raised.
Mm-hmm.
they just didn't, I don't think they were prepared for what we were going to walk into in high school. Like they didn't know the environment of what living in Las Vegas was like versus Boise, Idaho. So
Las
I met
Vegas
it
is a
just,
big change coming out of Idaho, man.
I grew up quick, I think my first day of school, I had somebody slap me across the face and that turned into a fight on my first day of school.
Yeah.
And so, but that was the first time I got to learn because all the friends I had told me I can't let that stand. I have to fight him after school.
Of course
and
you
they
do.
egged it on and go, you gotta do this. And I'd never been in a real fight.
Right, because you're in Idaho out in the middle of nowhere, you know, where it's just chilling.
Well, I got bullied a
nice
lot.
city. Yeah.
But I didn't know what it was like to like stand up for yourself. And so they let me know that I had to fight and I had to stand up for myself. And it turned into a big after school special that you'd see on TV.
Really? Did they have like all the kids standing out around in a circle watching?
It's ridiculous. It was like the whole school showed up to the middle school where the fight was going to be. But I did it. I showed up. The smartest thing I did was I went and got some of the older gangbangers that I had met in my apartment complex to drive me over there because everybody told me they told me I was going to get jumped. Like the whole school, it was like the popular kid in school. They're like, you're all day long. All I heard is you're going to get your ass beat. You're going to get your ass beat.
It's coming.
And so I ran over, got the guys that I knew that were a little harder. They were not high schoolers. They were in their 20s. They were hiding out from LA.
Yeah.
I think one of their names was like Penguin, if that tells you anything. It gives you an idea of what you're dealing with. And they gave me a ride over to where the fight was. And it was so like they pulled up to the corner and they're like, hey, get out here. You need to walk down there by yourself. We're going to pull around behind them so they don't know we're here.
Oh, wow.
And so I had to get out of the car and walk down this street in my mind, I remember 500 kids. There was probably 200, but I had to walk down this long street to where this fight was going to happen. And we fought. Somehow I won. I don't know what I was doing. He didn't know what he was doing either. So it worked out well. Neither of us knew what we were doing. And somehow I managed to like win this fight. And then that's when his friends decided they were going to come jump in. And that's when these guys came out of the crowd and apparently they thought it was appropriate to pack guns to the fight. So they opened up their coats and had guns. And
of course, why not?
They're like, the fight's over. Anybody have anything to say? And the whole crowd went quiet. And it was a moment that still to this day, like I get goosebumps thinking about it because I felt so powerful.
Did you go out
in that moment? No, I wasn't a drinker yet. I was sober. Wow. I never drank yet. But I felt there was a change in that moment, that having that kind of power, having that kind of like ability to one, stand up for myself, but two, the control that came with that, or false sense of control that came with that, something changed for me. So, but it did give me some street cred when I started going to school the next day. And I thought, I was going to show up to school and get my ass beat, but all I was getting was high fives. And, me and my little group of friends all of a sudden started to like, be more a part of. And it was a few months into being at school, we all decided one day that because people were drinking, that's what all the kids were doing in high school. So me and my core group of friends, we decided we needed to get drunk. We needed to do this together. We wanted to do it as our group. And so I went to Albertsons and I stole a 2-liter bottle of Purple Passion. It's grape juice and Everclear, and it comes in like a soda bottle. And I stole it and stuck it down my big baggy pants because that's what I wore because I was trying to be a wannabe gangbanger.
Yeah, you just want to fit in. Just trying to fit in. That's it. You're just trying to be part of the gang.
We went to the park behind my house where there was one of those, flash flood ditches. And we all went down there and we started drinking Purple Passion. And that was my first real drink. That was my first real drunk. And all I remember from that night was I instantly felt funny. I instantly felt handsome. I felt strong. Everybody liked me. I was the life of the party. I also fell down the side of the cliff and got bloody. Puked. got caught because my parents caught
Oh
me
yeah, that's the
first
first thing
time.
that's gonna happen. Yeah,
First
absolutely.
time, and that's my first experience of like always getting caught. I got caught, nobody else got in trouble, and all I remember was next day at school was like, okay guys, are we doing that again today? Like, all I wanted to do was drink the next day.
Yeah.
And my obsession was on from day one. From day one, the obsession and compulsion to drink was, and this was before I discovered drugs. Once I discovered
Yeah.
drugs, um,
Already knew what
it
alcohol
really,
made you feel like, so
yeah,
you're like, "Oh, once we get to drugs, it's, the game is over."
yeah,
Yeah, you can
yeah.
keep
And
that
so,
stuff over there, and we're just gonna go right to this stuff right here. Let's
yeah,
just go 0 to 5,000,000 right now.
and that's part of my story. Once I discovered drugs, it escalated quickly once I started drinking. Every day I wanted to drink.
Yep.
I started skipping school to go drink with my friends. We would steal alcohol from the local Albertsons and just
So
drink every day.
telling my story almost.
Yep.
We used to go into the local Eckerd's or Revco's, a good drugstore
Uh,
back in the day when they used to have peach schnapps. They had all the schnapps, and we would just grab a bottle of peppermint. And man, if I ever smell a bottle of peppermint schnapps again, I'd probably puke.
absolutely.
Just from the
Yep.
smell, dude, because of the puke that came out when we would go to
Yep.
the under 21 clubs to dance and hang out with the girls
Yep.
and shit.
Yep.
It would just be bananas,
Well,
So
and
if
that
I
was
never
the
smell that again.
peppermint schnapps was like the fancy one. Like, go steal the peppermint schnapps because it had
And the
flavor.
peach too, the peach schnapps. Oh my
Yeah.
god, it was
Yeah.
like pure sugar and terror. It's
Yep.
awful.
Um, but then, again, same thing that happened with alcohol. The
Mm.
people around us were using drugs and, not just smoking pot, but they were using all the hard stuff. And we decided as a group that it would be smart. Again, we're 15, 14 years old, 15 years old, to go to a friend that was a reputable drug dealer because he's our friend.
Yeah,
And
because they're all reputable.
let's get the good crystal meth to make sure it's good and not the bad crystal meth. And we sat together and consciously decided to try crystal meth together.
Ugh. You guys went
And
straight from just drinking some shit to glass right out of the
we had
gate.
played with like smoking pot too, and it was mainly drinking and smoking pot. But then,
Yeah.
yeah, everybody was snorting. It was a thing in Las Vegas at the time, and so we decided that's what we were going to try, and we're going to be responsible about it and try it together from a good drug dealer.
Sure.
And I turned into a tweaker overnight. Like,
Oh,
again,
wow.
same way I turned
That's
into
fast.
alcohol. Like,
Just
all I wanted to do was I wanted to put more drugs in. And once I discovered drugs, the drinking kind of took a back seat. I wanted to put as many drugs into my body as I can, as often as I can, without regard to what the results would be. So it didn't matter if it was meth, mushrooms, acid. Like, I would do it all at the same time. Pills, you could just hand me a pill and I would take it and not care. Like, I didn't even know what it was.
yeah.
I had a cousin once. I stopped by his house, and this is, flash jump forward, and my parents tried to save my life by getting me out of Las Vegas because I was getting arrested. I was failing out of school. All the bad things that could happen. You could getting in fights, getting physically violent at home, running away, disappearing. And so they heard about me getting into some altercations and carrying guns.
That was
And
it.
that's when that was like, we got to get him out of here. And so they shipped me back to Idaho to live with my uncle because everything's going to be fine in Idaho. They don't have stuff in Idaho. Just get him out of Vegas.
Yeah.
And
hey, where
it,
meth, man. Idaho.
it escalated just as quick. Yeah.
Yeah, work our way around. Yeah.
Just as quick. And when I got back to Idaho, I was expelled from my first two high schools and just ended up hanging out behind the drug high school selling drugs. And, before I was 18, I was in 6 rehabs, escaped from 3 of them. I spent most of my juvenile years either in rehab or in jail. And the brief periods in between was just time for me to get as loaded as I could until they threw a net over me again for whatever reason.
Sure.
And I remember stopping by this one cousin's house once, and I just showed up. I'm like, hey, I'm going to a party. I don't have any drugs on me. Do you got anything? And he handed me like some pill that was blue, and it was about that big. And he's like, just take this, and you'll be having fun. I didn't even ask him what it was. And it was so big, I broke it in half and gave it to another guy. Turns out it was like a horse tranquilizer, and 4 days later, I came to.
Oh
Like
yeah.
didn't know where I was at, didn't know how I'd gotten there, and but that was my using like my ability to control anything. Like it did not matter. If you told me it would get me high, I would put it in my body. And I obviously knew I'd been introduced through the court systems, through rehabs. Like I knew the disease of addiction by this time.
Sure.
I had tastes of freedom from it by being locked up. And every time I would get out of those situations of being locked up or in rehab, like I would come out with the best intentions. Like I would come out of rehab, of graduating rehab and having a whole ceremony and my parents being there and doing family day and coming out on that pink cloud of like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm
And
going
then the people, places, and things set in.
and within a few days.
Yep. There's that guy. I remember him. Hey, buddy,
Yeah,
what's going on? Hey,
just
man, I'm
back
getting
and running.
sober.
Yep,
Okay,
just back and running.
glad to hear you're getting sober, man. You want to come on over? We're going over to Jim's house, and he's
Yep.
got some shit, and boom,
Yep.
there we are. Yeah, fall right into it. Fall right into
and
it.
I was familiar with the 12 steps. I was court ordered to go to 12-step programs, and I hung out in the rooms for off and on, and I'd show up, get my green card signed, and be high on mushrooms and think nobody in the room knew, and find a cute little sober girl to try to hit on, and they'd want nothing to do with me because they knew I wasn't sober. But I wanted what they had. I just didn't know how to get what they had.
Didn't want to be. It's like a lot of the people, that you see today. I mean, I wish more people would stay in the rooms. You see, could come in, and once their paper gets signed, they disappear, and you don't see them again.
Yeah.
It's just, everybody wants to eat, but nobody wants to hunt. And it's like everybody wants the 10-year, 5-year, 1-year, 2-year, whatever coin. But they don't want to do the work to get there, and that requires abstinence, spirituality, and working some steps. And
I think the benefit to me, and I think that I've seen with people that are in the rooms getting green cards or forced to go to rehab, or in Idaho we have a drug court, which is a very extensive drug program. If you get in trouble, like for me, I was introduced to it, and so when I was finally ready, when I finally decided, when I finally was broken enough and had that spiritual experience, that I knew I couldn't drink like a normal person, and I'll talk about that.
I was going to say, I want to know how that happened.
Like I knew where to go, and that was the benefit of those green cards and those, like, because a lot of times I wasn't ready yet.
Seed was planted,
but it was planted, and I knew there was even like I knew that those people found some solution somewhere, and at least I could go there and try to get it somehow when I was ready. So yeah, I spent most of my time in rehab or juvenile hall. And it's all kind of a blur. One thing that isn't a blur is I turned 18 in juvie. I don't know how long I'd been in there for. Maybe it was 6 months or 2 months or 30. I have no idea. But I turned 18 in juvenile hall. And when you turn 18 for minor crimes, all the guards and my probation officer, they like gave me a ceremony, patted me on the back, and gave me the lecture on the way out the door that your criminal record is sealed. You're walking out of here with a clean slate. You've been sober for however many days. And again, same thing. I had all the dreams, like all the things that I saw my peers doing and friends and what I was taught I'm supposed to do. Like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to stay sober. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get my GED. And I'm going to go to college. I've got it this time. I've got a clean slate. I can do this. I'm going to go back to meetings. I'm going to figure this out. 2 weeks later, I was arrested in the state of Nevada with 7 felonies. Now as an adult, because I'm no longer a minor, and from getting out of jail with all the dreams and hopes and best intentions,
clean record,
left to my own devices, trying to figure out how to do this half-assed, still go to some meetings while still hanging out with all my friends that partied and wanted to do both worlds. Within 2 weeks, I was arrested in Nevada, strung out. Like getting arrested was the best thing that ever happened because it saved my life. I'm sure. Like this was the only time I had gone like to the paranoia state of thinking I was being chased by people we had stolen drugs from, and so that when that cop arrested me, I'm sure it was right before I was about to do a line, and he pulled up and got caught red-handed and had a bag of cocaine fall out of my sock. And when I tried to like hide it under the cop car,
Yeah.
it opened up. And every time I tried to bury it in the sand, the powder circle got bigger at my feet. And finally I'm standing in a circle of powder. And the cop walks over and he's like, what do we got going on here? Again, I always got caught.
He's working on my Zen garden, officer. Working on a Zen garden here.
But he saved my life, I'm sure of it. And I didn't stop using that night when I got arrested. I went to jail. My parents refused to bail me out. They finally did. They put up their house probably to get me out of jail. Nevada didn't mess around with drugs at that time. So if you had a rolling paper, it was a felony. So they just threw felony after felony after felony on me. And came back to Idaho, told my parents when I got back to Idaho, I'm going to go camping for a weekend. And that turned into me disappearing, doing a drug fuel trip across the U.S. And my parents, concerned that I'm not going to show up for court. And anyway, I finally made it to court. They sentenced me to I want to say it was 10 years in prison with a rider to where I could go spend a year in this, or about 10 months in this program, boot camp program at the Nevada State Penitentiary in Indian Springs, Nevada. So I had to go to the Nevada State Penitentiary for a year. Part of that was in, with general population. And then they transitioned me over to the rider program, and you had to go through this boot camp. And as long as you graduate the boot camp, you get a withheld judgment.
So, so the 10 years sentence would be suspended.
So 10 years is suspended.
Got it.
So I graduated the program, got my GED in prison. People ask me about my education all the time. And I'm like, yeah, I got my GED in the Nevada State Penitentiary. I did not graduate from high school, but, and so when I graduated from that, again, it stands out because I got out of juvie when I was 18. I got out of prison on about April 20th of when I was 19. So about 2 weeks after my 19th birthday. So it was about a year that all happened, year and a couple weeks that all happened.
Sure.
And when I was released, it was, if you don't screw up your parole, your charges will be dropped. You won't be a felon.
So you were on paper when you got out as on top of it.
Yeah. So I was on parole for 10 years and they let me come back to Idaho to do my parole.
They paroled you for 10 years? You were on parole for 10 years?
That's what
oh my God.
That's what they gave me in order for the withheld judgment.
Sure.
And if you mess up in that withheld judgment, you get your full sentence. There's no.
I said the term, the fact that you're on probation or parole for 10 years is like it's almost like they're if you go back to any of that lifestyle, you're going away. You're guaranteed, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And it was the same.
You got to be an angel or get
really good.
Do the good shit. Let's go do some time.
So it was the same feeling when I got out of juvie. Like I had a job lined up. I was already going to register for college. I had my meetings I was going to go to. I'd been writing letters the whole time I was in there, connecting with people. I was going to stay sober. I had some sobriety under my belt because of being locked up, and I didn't use when I was there.
They mail you soap on a rope or no?
Nope. Nope. And so I got back to Idaho, started going to meetings, doing the 12-step program, started pretending to work with a sponsor, and got a cute, I'm sure, a 12-step girlfriend. Started doing the deal, and I started feeling good about my life. Things were rolling. I had a new truck. I had a job. I was going to go to college. And I had a friend call me somewhere in the middle of, 19 years old. Actually, I know when he called me. It was October 11th of 2012 or of 96. And he said, hey, do you want to go to a party tonight? Oh. Everything was good. Everything was great in my life. There was nothing going on. Shit was rolling. I was feeling good. And I was like, I'm 19 years old. I never really had a problem with drinking. It was all the drugs. All the other 19-year-olds can drink. That's what they're doing. And I'm sober. I can go to the party and stay sober. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll come over and meet you. And when I got there, he handed me a Heineken. He's like, here, do you want a beer? And I didn't even think about it. I'm like, I can have a beer. It's been so long. It's been over a year now. Took a drink of beer. 3 hours later, I was back in handcuffs.
Oh, shit, no.
So from my first drink that night, no
Oh,
were involved. 3 hours later, I was back in handcuffs with a DUI and a DWP because I didn't have driving privileges other than for work
right.
and meetings. And same thing happened.
Oh,
He went home. He took a taxi home, and I went to jail. And and that's when I sat in that jail cell, and I had what people call a burning bush experience, a spiritual experience.
yeah.
Like the voice was loud and clear in that jail cell. Like I knew I can never drink like a normal person, and this is going to be my result if I ever let alcohol touch my body again. And I came to terms with the fact that I can't drink and I can't do drugs. Like it was decided to my core, and I was willing to do whatever I could to not go back to that lifestyle.
All the vices are
And
gone.
everything. It was
Yeah,
just wasn't
I
it
can
wasn't
so
an option for me.
yeah.
And it was so loud, like it was so clear. The voice was so clear. It was actually, even though I knew I was in deep shit, like looking at a parole violation,
Yeah.
going back to prison, um, I was so at peace in that moment. Like I knew, like I don't have to live this way. And I got out of jail that day. The next day, got bailed out. I went straight to my parole officer's place and sat down to wait for him. Told him what happened, and he's like, "Since you came to me and you were upfront with me about it, you didn't try to hide anything. Like, I'm not going to violate you. This is your only get out of jail free card. Get your shit together and make sure you take care of all the responsibilities for your DUI. But I'm not going to violate you." And again, that one man could have changed my life forever if he would have sent me back to prison.
Oh, for
Who
sure,
knows
for sure.
where I would be in this
Who
life?
knows what you'd be doing today,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you might have either became a much better criminal, or a lifer, or you
Well,
how you are today, the man
look
you
at
are
me. I
today.
would. I don't. I wouldn't have. I've seen what real prisons look like, and I know I wouldn't have survived it. And um, so he's again that another officer saved my life because he chose not to violate me, where the one chose to arrest me. And from that day forward, like everything in my life changed. Like the willingness to do what was actually talked about in 12-step programs, the willingness to uh, actually work with the sponsor and participate in the meetings that I was going to and get service positions and try to give back and be a part of like the community that I formed at that time was so great. And it's still, I'm connected to so many people. It's like a lifelong community, even when they relapse. Like I've had people that were I originally got sober with relapse, but they're still part of that community. We have such a
Sure.
connection through getting sober together. But that community, even through all the years I've been sober, when I'm in a place that I'm not willing to do anything, when I'm in a place of dark, that community helps bring me back out of it.
Yep.
Community helps bring me, they're there to support, and I have the responsibility to do that in turn. So I instantly dove right into 12-step meetings, into the working with the sponsor, and started figuring out what life is going to look like sober.
Hmm.
The deal with life, though, is
Did you
life
stay in
kept happening.
Vegas? Did you stay in Vegas
No, this is
after you
back
got?
in Boise.
So you
This
went.
is in
So
Boise.
after you got out of jail in Vegas, you went back to Boise, and you,
Yep.
you went to the
Yep.
party in Boise, and
Mm-hmm.
then you told the PO, "Hey, here's what's the deal."
Yep.
And so we're still in Boise, and
Yep.
we're just piecing it together now. At this point, we've had
Yep.
our spiritual experience to where we know that this obsession is removed, and I just want to move forward with my life. And somehow
Yep.
God intervened when you couldn't intervene, when somebody when you couldn't take care of yourself.
Yeah,
God,
absolutely. It was
God finally
definitely.
woke you up and said, "Here's what it is, buddy. One more
Well, and
break."
I talk about this a lot. It was not my worst bottom.
Correct.
Like I had so many bottoms leading up to that point. Overdoses, of getting the shit kicked out of me, getting thrown out of my parents' house, like so many things that qualified as bottoms that should have gotten me sober, where people would be like, "Why aren't you changing your life?" Sitting in rehab and making a list of all the bottoms
Yeah.
because that's what you do. And this was not my worst bottom. This was the bottom that mattered. And I tell that to people, like, you don't have to find your worst bottom. It's the
No,
one where you decide. It's the
you
one where
don't.
you decide that there's got to be a change that happened, and you decide to your core and to your soul that you can't live the way that you're living. And that's what happened in that moment. Was I made a decision that day to kill off, and I talked about this on a post the other day. Like, I learned that the term decide is to kill off all other option. And
Mhm.
I did. I killed off all the option that drugs and alcohol were an option in my life.
They say when
And
the pain of a man's current reality outweighs his fear to change, he will change.
exactly, absolutely.
That's the reality.
And that's what happened is I got to dive into the work, and people talk about that a lot. They talk about like the work, and people are like, what does that even mean? I mean, it is looking deep. It is doing deep and looking at the dark stuff. And for me, I found that work through the 12 steps. It's still the solution I live by today. The solution that it's so funny. I have my little journal here, but this morning I did some inventory. I haven't done inventory for a little bit now. I haven't needed to I haven't had anything come up where I needed to do inventory.
For sure.
But something came up that I decided I wanted to do some inventory on. And I have, the longer I've stayed sober, I've got to explore other things to grow my spiritual practices. I've got to explore other things to grow my physical health, my relationships. I get to go seek outside counseling for situations. And, I get to grow all those things. But my solution for life and staying sober has not changed from when I first got here. And that's working with my sponsor, taking things to the steps, processing it through the 12 steps, taking it and getting it removed from me, and making any amends I need to do. And so really that core practice of what I learned when I first got here has allowed me to not drink for the last 27 years.
And no matter what, don't drink. That's
Yeah.
the big deal. No matter what, don't pick up. Is the whole thing, it's I can't, he can. I think I'll let him, and just keep the house clean and carry the message. That really what it all boils down to. It's kind of, it's funny you talk about that, because sometimes I find myself, I heard something really great and I know you're an AA, I do NA, and we read out of this book called The Living Clean Book. And I read something the other day. They were talking about, the step 11 in improving our conscious contact with God. And sometimes we think our conscious contact is constant comfort. And man, and I find myself praying for constant comfort as opposed to praying for conscious contact. And that's when I need to start writing those gratitude lists and start inventorying my day. Why am I feeling this way? There's obviously all these reasons. I have to look at all these different angles because it spirals out, like it spider webs out. So, I understand that.
Well, I found myself, the longer I stayed sober, making it just one day when you're first getting started is a miracle. Every day is a miracle. And somewhere along the line through doing that work with the sponsor and sticking around, going to meetings and being a part of the fellowship and getting a community, that compulsion to drink was removed. Mm-hmm. The compulsion to use was removed. I participate in both fellowships. I find, comfort more comfortable in one, but I go to all the fellowships and there's solution there for no matter what. And but somewhere along the line, that compulsion to drink was removed. I don't know what step it happened on. I can't say it was the first step, the second step, the third step, the fourth step. Like, I have no idea. I just remember one day waking up and realizing I'm free from it. Mm-hmm. And I've been free from it for a long time. I haven't thought about drinking or using for
2 decades.
So many years. Many years. I've thought about a lot of other horrible shit when it's gotten bad, like when I've gone dark, when life has happened. I've thought about causing harm to other people physically. Mm-hmm. I've thought about, I've gone out and done things to try to fill the void because I feel so empty inside rather than doing the work. I've done a lot of things, but that compulsion to drink and use has never returned to me once it was removed. I've never thought about it again.
Yeah.
And I have been around it. Like, a lot of people talk to me that are in recovery because I am exposed to alcohol so much. Like, I don't hide from it. Once I was free from it, I learned I can go anywhere. I can do anything. I can be around it as long as I'm in a spiritually fit condition. And I always have an exit strategy to where I'm not trapped in a place that I don't want to be at. I can go. we talked about this before. I was at a huge party in Mexico last year where it was 2 weeks of nonstop binge drinking all
Yeah.
around me. And I got to be referred to the whole time as like, ask Sober Gangster where we're going. He's the only sober one.
Yeah.
Like everybody like referred to me as
designated driver, the answer for everything, because you're the only guy that can compose a sober thought.
Well, I'm not being in those situations don't have power over me anymore once I was free from it. And as long as I'm taking care of the spiritual practices and my connection. And I love what you said. Like for a long time, I would compare how I felt on the inside to how maybe you sounded on the outside. So when you're in these environments where people are sharing their message and sharing the solution, I would compare how I feel and I'd be like, well, my program isn't like that. I'm not helping enough people. I'm not doing enough step work. I'm not connected to God the way I should be. And I've had experiences where I joke, but it's really true, where I've been on a walk out in the woods because I live in Sun Valley, Idaho.
You live in a beautiful area of the country, dude. That's beautiful.
And I can walk out my back door and I can go for a walk and I can feel the dew on the grass and I can feel the dirt under my, like, so spiritually connected. You know, I got my little spiritual beads because it's so spiritually connected, right?
Yeah.
I've felt that before. I've also felt so disconnected and like what you were just talking about. Like I must not be connected to my higher power. I must not be connected to the source anymore because I don't feel good. My relationship,
you know what that is
always there.
The not feeling good is the dis-ease, and you know, the discomfort. You know, and that's what I had a sponsor years ago, and he said, "What do you think dis-ease means?" And he says it means uncomfort, dis-ease. You know, their lack of comfort, and you know, if I'm not in, you know, full recovery, then I'm in relapse, you know, or as they want to say, you know, and I'm not going to run out and pick up tomorrow. I'm not going to pick up on a month from now. But if I stay on it in that dark place and I'm not doing the things that I need to do to get help and to improve upon my spiritual condition and finding that solution to feeling better, then I could find myself in a very dangerous place, you know, especially with today's, I mean, you know, the message I would want to, you know, I really would love to know is, you know, what do you tell the kids today? I mean, they've got fentanyl and they've got all this shit out there that is I mean, parents are dropping, kids are dropping. Little kid crawling around on a hotel room floor died from coming in contact with fentanyl. Baby.
And I just talked about this on a show the other day, and fentanyl wasn't around when I was using, and even like what's happening with just the low key drug, you know, pot was dirt weed. You're lucky to get some good stuff. I was doing it.
Good skunk butt back in the day.
You know, I had to like sit there and pick out stems and seeds
all day.
And even just 3 weeks ago, I walked into a pot shop because somebody I was with needed to pick up something for their whatever they were doing that night. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go check it out and I want to see what. And I wore my Sober Gangster hat in, and I'm like, oh my god, there's just shelves of the most beautiful stuff you've ever seen if you know what pot is, and you can just buy it off the shelf, and it's so strong now.
Check right out of life. Not to mention they got candies now and gummies, and you know, you know, eat one gummy and disappear for 3 weeks, you know, or whatever it is. You know, you're gone.
It's so powerful compared to the stuff I was doing. However, the disease is the same.
Yeah.
And I guess the good news about that, like once I found hard drugs, it brought me to my bottom faster. And I think people need to find their bottoms or whatever pain they need to be in to change, like you said. And, you know, these drugs are harder and they're stronger and they will bring people to their knees faster. It is scary what is happening with fentanyl and how dangerous it is. I talked about this on a podcast the other day. I just got a friend of mine gave me three or four overdose kits. Narcan in it.
Yeah.
And I put them in all my kids' cars. And my kids are great. Like yes, they're normal high schooler kids. I've got 3 kids. We've had our ups and downs and we've gone through struggles, but they're thriving. They're not.
Yeah, you just tell them, like I told our kids, I was like, hey, look, Dad's done enough drugs for the whole family. There's no reason that anybody needs to go out and try anything. because Dad's already done it all for all you guys, man. Just go and enjoy your life. Take vacations, buy nice cars, do fun shit. Yeah, just
Yeah,
don't screw your life with drugs and alcohol.
we get to talk about the reality of it. They get to hear my stories, and they know, again, they've never known me using, so they don't know what that
It's
even means.
beautiful.
And when they start to
Beautiful.
hear some of those stories, they're like, "Wait, what? You did what?" I brought my son once to listen to me speak, and he afterwards was like, "Wait, you don't talk about that at home." And something happens when I'm in these environments, or when I'm telling my story. I will share the things I won't share outside of that environment, and um, so we have a really open house about that stuff, and we talk about it. But I want them to have that in their car, because at any party that they happen to go to, with any, like, all of a sudden there can be a kid
100.
overdosing on something that was laced with fentanyl that they had no idea was laced with fentanyl. That's even happening when you buy it legally at the drugstores across the border, because we don't do that in Idaho, but you can go to Oregon and buy it, and they bring it all back. It's coming laced with fentanyl still, so it's really dangerous. And
Everything you buy
some,
on the street they're saying has traces of fentanyl in it. So
yeah. So
if
we
you
just
decide
really
that you
try
want to go
to
back and try some cocaine, you're probably going to get some cocaine with some fentanyl in
fentanyl.
it. You're
Yeah,
probably going to
yeah,
die. Yeah.
yeah.
Not
And so
even
we
worth
really
trying.
have conversations about it. But for those that are trying to get sober, regardless of if it's fentanyl or it's
Whatever
that
the drug.
bottom,
Yeah.
it's the bottom. And there may be additional steps they have to take. They may need to go get medical detoxing to do it safely, get support in that area, if depending on how hard they're addicted to it, and if they're going to have bad withdrawals. But if they're broken and they are looking for a solution, the solution's out there, and it's more readily available out there now. Look at, like, us. This wasn't around. And I still truly believe in the anonymous part of, and everybody's anonymity is their own decision and how they
Correct.
live their life. And I believe that, it's never my place to break anybody's anonymity. I get to live my life however I want, and I live my life out loud, because the more people that see Sober Gangster walking through an airport, or even before Sober Gangster was invented, I've always been open
Somebody
about my
carrying
recovery.
You're just a guy
Yeah,
carrying the message, man. Let's take
it
all the
helps.
labels off. At the end of
Yeah.
the day, man, you're just a guy. Our primary purpose is to carry the message to the addict or alcoholic who still suffers. That's our number one
Yep.
deal.
Yep.
And that's what works for me. Like I can't tell you how many times I've sat on an airplane and a guy is talking his story, and I said, "Oh yeah, no kidding." I said, "I'm in a program for that," and oh yeah, and all of a sudden you're sharing that story, and that guy wants to give you his number, and all. Next thing you know, he's sending you his gratitude list. I have a sponsee that went through that. He met a guy, he was at a thing, and the guy said, "I'm just getting out of rehab," and they connected, and he lives in Columbia, South Carolina. My sponsee lives up here in Rock Hill, and this kid sends him a gratitude list like once a week now. They're just friends, they met on an airplane, and that's the beauty of recovery, is that, man, you just don't know who you're going to run across. You might be the only face of recovery that somebody sees ever, in their life. And trust me, I have a son that's 12-year-old, 12 years of using fentanyl and heroin and crack and meth, and he shoots it all. And I'm trying to get him into rehab as we speak. And the pain of a father, knowing his oldest son, he's 29, you're begging, you want to see him make it. I mean, when you're going that hard for that long, I mean, since you're 17, your time is going to run, your ticker is going to, and your time is going to run out real quick. And I told him that, but as a father, man, all you can do is plead and plead and plead. But you guys, my dad always said to me, he said, my dad had 36 years, and he said, "There's no wine before it's time, son. Just got to remember that."
My parents did everything they could to save my life, and it didn't matter how much money they threw at it, how much jail time they threw at it. It helped my bottoms. It helped me get education for when I was ready.
Sure.
But there was nothing they could do to make it stick until I was ready. And they got to the point of where, they had to completely let go. They had to let go of the result and let me find it. They couldn't rob me. One of my good friends, his name's Hippie. He
cool.
he told me a long time, like, you can't rob a man of his journey. And
Oh
each of
yeah,
us.
no, no.
That everybody has to have their journey.
Who are we to impede another man's journey? That's what
Yeah.
my old sponsor used to say. Who are we to? He goes, I'm not going to stop you. He goes, I can only do. When you're ready to come back and you're ready to stop the pain, I'll be there to wipe the lacerations in your spirit and soul. We'll help you stop
Yeah.
bleeding. But yeah, if you want to go out and get more pain, there's plenty right outside that front door.
Well, and when we were talking about like just carrying that message and
Mhm.
being available for people, and I had an experience that taught me. I want to say it was probably 15 years ago. Um, like I have a responsibility. I was given this gift, and I have the responsibility to give this gift back. Like there were people here that teach me how to do this,
Sure.
and one of my first sponsor, uh, his name is Kurt Jacobs, and he relapsed probably when I was about 5 years sober, and he was out for a while. And it's when I've watched a lot of people with time go out, and it's really hard to get back, and
Yeah.
it's really hard to come back after you've been sober and experienced it. And so whenever I hear of anybody that has been, they had 10 years and then they go back out and they're in their first 30 days. Like I just hug them as hard as I
Heartbreaking.
can, because I've watched so many people struggle to get what they had, and just kind of throw away what they had before and act like it didn't exist, even though it was a part of them. It's still part of their experience. And so I really just try to love on them as much as I can now when I see people coming back in. But I was married to my first wife, and she was a normie. She didn't know a lot about the program. I kept it two different worlds. She just knew I was sober, and I did 12-step meetings, and I have a whole bunch of friends that are sober, but I really didn't commingle my home life with my recovery life at that time.
Mhm.
And we went to a coffee shop, and Kurt was there, strung out on whatever painkillers and cocaine he was on. And I had my baby with me in the seat. He was young still. And we were walking up, and I'm like, gave Kurt a big hug and introduced him to my wife. And you could tell, like, he wanted me to stop and talk to him. He reached out. He was like, I'm struggling. I don't know what to do. And, shaken and in a bad spot. And, I shuffled my wife inside and talked to him for a minute, and went and bought the coffee and came out. And it's like, okay, Carl, I'll reach out to you. And I kind of just shuffled away and got my family away from the situation. And it was a weird feeling in the moment
Know
of
that
like,
feeling.
they're not exposed to this, but, and so I left, and I didn't sit down. Like I didn't stop doing what I was doing. I didn't sit with Kurt. And 2 or 3 days later, he killed himself.
Ugh.
And it's still like, and I always talk about it, because whenever this conversation comes up of like, we have this responsibility to carry the message to somebody who's still suffering. I talk about it because people need to know what can happen when we turn our back on it. And I turned my back that day. Like I didn't make myself available that day.
Yeah.
I didn't stop doing what I was doing. I didn't reach back out later on to see. It wasn't convenient for me in the moment. It wasn't whatever. Sure. And
I understand it. Believe me, I do.
3 days later, the guy that got me sober, the guy that was there for me, killed himself.
My weakest moment. Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's brutal.
And so it's important. Like, and I know like that, of course I carry it. Of course I have feelings towards it. Of course it affects me. I don't know if I would have sat with him if anything would have been different or not. What he decided to do that's his decision. And I know I don't have any control of that. I do know, now looking back, that I have an obligation and responsibility for, carrying that message to the still suffering addict or alcoholic, wherever they are.
For 12-stepping anybody, and it's that's the beauty of our program, or any recovery program, is that, the one thing, it's funny. We're like, they say we come in, we're in animal form when we come to find recovery. And the best animal that I can compare us to is like these beaten dogs. And all a dog wants is purpose and love. The minute when you go to any pound, all they want is for you to just tell them you love them and give them purpose. Let them come home and lay on your rug and go out in your yard and chase the bad animals away, or whatever it is. And that's where we are when we first come in. And I can remember that time when I remember getting down in my bathroom and getting on both knees and asking God to remove the obsession to use, man. And it was
Yeah.
just, I remember that like aha moment. I remember my last time I went out, and I came back in, and I remember like 2 days in, I started crying for days. I wept for like 2 weeks while I was in treatment because it felt like I died. Something died inside of me, and it felt great. I had lost my wife in the process. Now, granted, my wife and I are back together, but we had gone through so much, and I had just put her through so much, and I didn't think there was any, opportunity to rekindle or to get any of the quote unquote 9-step promises that they talk about, and I can't tell you how quickly those 9-step promises, they come back to us relatively fast. I mean, I get a lot of stuff back real quick, and then
Yeah.
God's like, well, you can't have the whole cookie. Here's just a piece, and I'm like, come on, bro, man, can we just let it rip? Come on. How many more gratitude lists do I got to write where you're at the top of the list? God, come on, man.
Well, it's crazy
You
how
know?
like those promises,
Yeah,
how like they're even understated.
they
Like
are.
the way my life has changed so completely um, from where I was at, and even like the way my life has changed in recovery. Like
Mhm.
some of the behaviors I've discarded through recovery, some of the feelings, because in recovery, life doesn't stop. I've still had to experience death of close people that I love. I've gone through divorces. Um, I've gone through bankruptcy. I've gone through having beautiful kids, but I've gone through having loads of money. Like I've experienced all of it through the happy times when things are great. I have an ability to be disconnected from God. I have the ability to be disconnected from my spiritual connections
Complacent.
when things are awful. Yeah, like I have a range of emotions all the time, and having that connection with my higher power, having that relationship, and having that spiritual experience, and having those tools, a lot of times I'm not willing to touch them. Like a lot of times, the only thing I can do is go sit my butt in a chair, not drink no matter what, not talk to anybody or look at anybody, because if I do, I'm going to cry immediately.
Yeah.
And
Or
finally get
explode.
somebody sitting there like getting me to open up or sit through a 12-step meeting and finally like say it out loud. And I don't know how many meetings I've been in where I've cried like a baby, and because I'm just going through it because
Yeah.
something traumatic has happened, and it's a place where I feel I can share whatever is going on in my life. And once I make it through those first couple moments, I finally get that willingness back to call my sponsor, finally follow his directions and take it through the 12 steps and write inventory to find out what's going on and if I need to make amends and go through it. And through that stuff, I make it through it, and I come out like the promises just keep going. Like they
Oh yeah.
keep getting better and better when I do that work. Like when I dive into the work and when I grow through it, I have spiritual experiences with things that I never would have imagined,
For
the
sure.
life that I can never imagine.
So another one I want to ask. So how did we get to Sober Gangster? How did that come
Oh
about?
man. So I've been drawn to want to live more out loud for a long time.
Sure.
Probably, I should know, 10 years.
Sure.
About 10 years ago, I did a post on social media. It was one of my first kind of really out loud posts about my recovery. It was probably 10 years ago in 8 days because it was on my sobriety birthday. I did a post celebrating, I think, 15 years or 16 years.
For your
And
anniversary.
yeah, for my anniversary, I did celebrate my 16 years. And I did a really just, again, I have a rule or just a habit. When I walk through the rooms of a 12-step program, I speak my truth and I am vulnerable and I share.
Mhm.
And even in this environment, I will more than likely speak the truth than if I'm just on the street.
Yeah.
And I got really vulnerable in that post and I shared what it was like. And if you're feeling this darkness, and I just really shared from the heart and just put it out there that I was celebrating the 16 years. And that night, a friend of mine from Vegas that I met when I was a kid in Vegas, he called me at 4 a.m. and I answered my phone because I'm like, this is weird. Why is he calling me at 4 a.m? And we had a moment. He read my post. It hit him hard. It was what he needed to hear that night for him to decide that there was a change he needed to make. And his sobriety milestone now is the day after mine, just from that 10-year mark. And so he's been able to stay sober ever since, like, he decided that day as
Wow.
a direct result of that, reading that post. It was something he needed to hear in that moment that allowed him to reflect on his life, to make a decision,
Yeah.
to make a change. And I knew, like, from that moment on, I'm like, this, being loud with my recovery and sharing it, you know, in a way that can help support other people in a vulnerable, what's the term that I love now? Being ruthlessly vulnerable and unapologetically
Unapologetic.
sober.
Yeah, unapologetic
Like
sober for sure.
Jenny Sober Life said that in a post, and I stole it because it's just so to my core of how I want to live my life. I want to be
Sure.
ruthlessly vulnerable and unapologetically sober in all areas of my life. Because when I do that, people recover, whether it's through me or through somebody else. And so, flash forward to, you know, 8 years had passed. I really wanted to do something. I was working on another website, and it happened to be for my wife's company, and she was doing something for Gangster Witch, and I'm sitting there helping her, and I'm like, really knowing I want to do more with my recovery journey and share more.
Sure.
I'm like, I wonder if Sober Gangster is available. I hopped on, and the domain was there, and I'm like, I had to get in a bidding war for it, and I ended up getting the domain, and just got really excited about the messaging, the branding, because for me, having a message that is in alignment with who I am and where I am at, and sobriety is my light, right? When I live in my sobriety, it's the light of my who I am. It's my essence. I'm the light. It's the light energy coming out of me.
Sure. It's gangster to share your recovery. It's straight gangster.
Gangster's dark for me. Like, I have a gangster side of me that always is there. Like, I've done some gangster shit. Like, I've been some gangster places. I still have a gangster part of me. Like, I still have a dark side. And
Absolutely.
I constantly am battling the light and the dark. And sometimes I'm living in the light and I'm living in my sobriety. Sometimes I'm living a little dark, but it's still, I'm living in my sobriety, and being able to balance both of those, light and dark, that we all walk around with, is truly what, like, that sober gangster means to
Every
me. And
man
so
has a Dr. Jekyll and a Mr. Hyde, buddy.
it's
Every
true. It's
mother
true.
effing one of them.
Well, and it was a weird moment when I realized, I think I was about 25 years sober. So recently, I talked about Jekyll and Hyde a lot in my story.
Mhm.
And I always referenced Jekyll, you know, the bad one, whichever one the bad one is. Is it Hyde? I think it's the bad one.
Mr. Hyde. Yeah.
Yeah. That's when I was using, right? The fact is, I was pretty great when I was using. It was when I was sober and you tried to keep me from using, I did all my horrible shit. I was a criminal when I was sober because I wanted to try to get drugs. If you tried to stop me from getting drugs, I would assault you. If you, like, a lot of the horrible things I did,
Yeah.
as Hyde, I was fucking sober.
Yeah.
And that was a gut punch to realize 25 years into recovery, you're like, wait a minute, you were a monster dead sober when they tried to keep you from your drugs and alcohol.
I
And
was a
so
monster both.
I still have that ability. Like, I still have that light and dark.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to recognize that and live in it and balance it, because there sometimes is a healthy time for dark. Like, that dark has carried me through some stuff sometimes until I could get back to the light. It's just, I don't want to cause harm when I'm in it. I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to hurt myself. And so being able to balance that. And yeah, being sober is the most gangster thing I've ever done. Like,
I
you
love
can't
that
get more
quote, dude.
gangster than
I love that
than
quote. Ever since I
any.
saw it on your web page, I was just like, that is the dopest quote I've ever heard. I was like, man, that makes so much sense, and it really resonated with my spirit of how I am inside, because because I didn't think I was ever going to be that guy that was, I just wanted to party. I just wanted to do I wanted to do a lot of coke, and I wanted to do a lot of drugs, and I want to party with a lot of rock stars. I want to stay in this ego fulfilled profession, ego driven profession, because when you're in rock radio, not only do the rock stars want to party with you, but so does every listener that is in your area. They want to get down and
Yeah.
do drugs with you, and drink with you and do shots. And I couldn't breathe a sober breath hardly ever in radio. there was a time where I had a 7-year period, but even then I didn't do the work to keep the ego at bay, and I never dismantled the ego,
Yeah.
the alternate personality that that Mr. Hyde,
Yeah.
and today, every day when I wake up, now I throw a shovel of dirt on that son of a bitch every morning. I just don't ever want. I can feel him stick his hand up through the dirt, but that's about as far as it goes. Because
Well,
I can't let him pull himself back out of that grave because he is it's a horrendous life. They're a person that I become. It's absolutely just it's pure evil. It's the way I look at it. It's just pure evil.
well, and I mean, I'm not supposed to be sitting here. Statistically,
Right.
and from how we're taught, like I'm supposed to be buried in a grave somewhere. I shouldn't
Sure.
be. I'm statistically, I shouldn't be here. And so, for me, being gangster, getting sober, going against what I'm supposed to be doing, I'm supposed to be dead. Going out and fighting against that and getting sober, again, is just the most gangster thing I could ever think of doing. And continuing to live that way and share it and promote it and talk proudly about it and try to help others find that same ability to be free from it because it's out there.
Yeah.
There's no reason everybody can't find freedom. It's just they have to
100%.
continue to hear about it. It's just like fentanyl. There's no reason
Right.
people need to know the problem with fentanyl. They need to
Correct.
know. Like I didn't know how horrific it is and how mainstream it is, and how my kids need to have an Narcan in their car just in case somebody's overdosing at a party, so they can save their life. But now that they know it, there's an opportunity for them to make a
Well,
difference.
and that's the craziness of the world we live in today, that they'll make so much awareness that we have, cannabis shops on every corner, and you can get your medical marijuana card. You can go get high, and you can buy the edibles and and you can get the ketamine treatments in Miami, and you can go and do mushrooms in Oregon, and that's declassified legal. And they got every liquor and alcohol and beer commercial online, but not one thing to help save people's lives that are deep in the depths of addiction. You don't see any commercials for that. You don't see, the things that are. It's all about human destructive behavior. It's and the consumer. We are consumers. Oh well, this is going to make me feel better. Shit, yeah, I'm gonna go get some of that, Tito's vodka or whatever the latest is Smirnoff flavor is for the week or the month. And they're rolling this stuff on TikTok, and they're rolling it on all your social medias, and it's baffling, it's mind-boggling, and we're a country that are killing ourselves, one line, one drink, one pill at a time, man. And it's the sad thing is that thank God that there are more guys like you out there. And I always look at these rock stars and these celebrities and these people that have the power to change lives. You have the power to put your message out there, and that's why I started this podcast. I was like, there's got to be more. We have to do more. And I'm so
Well,
glad that there's other people doing these sober podcasts and recovery podcasts, because everybody's got a cell phone. That's the one thing we
yeah.
do know. Everybody's got a cell phone, and don't know how you might find us or might reach us, but when you do reach us, it will be in your time, because that's when the time that God wanted you to see us. And
Well, and it's crazy to see how many celebrities are like, again, it was like hush hush 10 years
yeah,
ago. And now they're just so outspoken. There's so many, they're so outspoken about their recovery and how it's changed their life.
Mel
Guys that
Gibson,
have
Robert Downey Jr.
55 years, like,
Yeah.
yeah, Danny Trujillo, 50
Oh yeah,
some odd 55 years.
Danny
Yeah.
Trejo. Danny
I
Trejo.
mean, that's a OG right there. And they're
It is.
so outspoken about how it's, you know, completely changed their lives, and that there is a solution out there. And I know we talked a lot about like our solution. My solution I've found in the 12-step program. There are so many solutions out there. I don't care how you get sober. If it's
Yeah.
through other means other than 12-step program, there's a lot of social media social media groups now that are promoting sobriety, other ways to build community, do work, get a connection, have it removed. Like however you find it,
Get
I
it.
support it. Like I don't care how you find recovery. If you're finding recovery and it works for you and you're living a happy life, you're building a spiritual connection and you're able to help other people find recovery, there are so many solutions out there now, which is again a little gangster thing to say, because coming from where I come from in the 12-step world, there's a mentality of it's the only way.
Yeah.
And for me, it is my only way. Absolutely. It's my only way that I've found a solution, and it's the way I'm going to continue to live it. I don't believe it's the only way. I think there's a lot of paths to recovery. There's a lot of paths to spiritual connections. And however you find it, if it works for you, I mean, by all means. So I know
Absolutely.
there's people that have walked into the rooms and not felt comfortable. And the worst thing I can do is think of they don't get to find recovery now. I don't care how you find it. Just reach out. You can go to my page and there's solution links for all the different type of resources that are out there.
I saw that.
And sometimes it's an introduction that gets you to a different spot, that gets you to a different spot. And so, and I just really want to like speak loudly about there are many ways to get sober and just use the resources that are out there.
There are. You've got, all the fellowships, and then you have the celebrate recoveries, and all this
Yep.
stuff out there for everybody to get to. A great place for resources. Absolutely. www.sobergangster.com. I definitely strongly advise everybody stop by there. Check out the coaching page. Check out all the cool apparel that's on there. Got some great sweatpants on there, the white beater, the black shirt, the hat. There's stuff for the girls and there's stuff for guys, and it's a lot of fun, and it's cool wear, and it's cool gear. And and it just adds a little flair to speaking so loudly about something we're so proud to be today, and it truly is gangster to be sober, man, because all the rappers and all these people singing about drugs and alcohol and parties and all that stuff, man, it's, if you're sober, you're the gangster out there walking the streets right now. You're the next soldier of hope, that's going to help somebody else out there, which I think is awesome, man. And I thank you for joining me today, Jason, man. You've been an absolute plethora of info, and man, I just love you, bro. I'm glad you came on.
Thank you for having me, man. It was a lot of fun, and I'll just leave you with all it takes is one conversation. You can have one conversation with somebody, one moment in an airport, one moment at a coffee shop, and that conversation can save their life. And sometimes just having even if it's sober is sexy, sober Phoenix, whatever the shirt is, just having that message can change somebody's life. And so just have the conversations.
Sober, sexy. That's dude. I appreciate you too, man. It was an absolute pleasure. We're going to talk after the show as well. You can check out our website, stop by shotofhope.live. Again, you can go there for blogs. We've got videos. I'll have this interview up on the front page there. So if you want to, you can check out the live over there as well. The podcast that you can get on Amazon, iTunes, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and Apple Podcasts. So there's so many different ways that you can get us. And don't forget www.sobergangster.com. My man, Jason Williams, you will be a future and frequent guest on this show. You're always welcome on here. I love you to pieces, brother.
I want to jump on when you're interviewing somebody else. It'll be fun.
We'll have you. Trust me, I want to have you with me as well. I might have to bring you on as my co-host, brother. I really think I need you in my life today.
I like talking recovery, so let's
absolutely. Do it. Cool, man. Well, I'm going to close this out. And again, you can find us at sobergangster.com. You can find me at shotofhope.live. And we'll be back here again next Wednesday, 7 to 8 p.m. Shot of Hope Live.